Today is a review day, and what we're going to do, and when I say review, it's not just a Chapter 6 review day, it is a Chapter 5 and 6 review day because you have a test on both of these chapters next week. So because of that, what we want to do is kind of go through some of the things from Chapter 5 that we saw on our quizzes, and then after that, I'll just go ahead and let you go, and not let you go to leave, but let you go to the Math Excel stuff, and you can use that time to kind of ask questions, answer questions, and get some work done on that. Please, again, make sure you're using your time to work while you're in here. You earn that right by working. If you are not working, then you're probably going to lose your computer and all the other stuff. So other than that, just again, make sure you're working, using your time wisely, asking questions, trying to get things done, working together with people around you. There's a lot of positive options. Please just make sure you don't choose the negative ones. One of the things we talked about was rate of change, and we talked about rise over run 4 over 0. And what I told you to do whenever you have that fraction is to plug it in as 4 divided by 0. And by the way, those of you who keep getting that message that your batteries are low, you can still just hit clear and keep going. But 4 divided by 0 gives me the answer of divide by 0 error. And what I explained to you back then was that the error means that you can't divide by 0. Your calculator is telling you that you can try to divide 4 by 0, but that number does not exist. And because that number does not exist, it means that that slope is, as we called, undefined. Alright, U-N-D-E-F-I-N-E-D, undefined. So again, if your calculator gives you an error, and you can write some of this stuff down so you can be ready for the test next week, if this problem gives you an error, it means that your slope is undefined. We'll talk about what an undefined slope looks like later, but again, this was one of the questions that you had on your quiz that some of you missed and did not understand. Question number 2 we're going to talk about that was on your quiz said, what is the rate of change with the line rise over run of 0 over negative 5? And again, what I told you to do is type this into your calculator, 0 divided by negative 5, and notice that the calculator gave me the answer of 0. This is the only time when your answer is 0. One of them gave me an error, the other one gave me a 0. Error means that it doesn't exist, so it's undefined. 0 means the answer is actually 0. But again, notice that the calculator actually told me the answer is 0 here, whereas when I put in 4 over 0, it gave me an error and a big message saying, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, don't do that again. Alright. 3, what's the slope of the line? Remember, we had 0 slope, we had undefined slope. To teach you this, I gave you this thing that said this is a positive slope because it goes up. This is a negative slope because it goes down, and I said that a 0 slope is in between your positive and negative, which means that any slope that goes this direction is 0. Another way I told you is, whenever you don't know whether it's 0 or undefined, ask yourself, can you stand on this line? And my answer to that question is yes, I can, which is why the slope of this is 0, because that slope actually exists. Because I can stand on this line, the slope is 0. And just think about it. If I walk on this line, how much do I rise? Well, the answer is none, which is why the slope is 0. If I walk on this line, I am going up, which is why it's positive. If I walk on this line, I am going down, which is negative. If I am walking on this line, I am going nowhere, which is why, again, the slope is 0. So keep that in mind for your test. You're going to need to know that. Another thing you were asked to do is find the slope of a line in general, and what you had to do is find 2 good points. I hope you remember what 2 good points are. So again, you're looking at this, and these don't match, those don't match, but this one does. And so we then used rise over run starting from the leftmost point, and we counted our steps to get down first. Remember, because I went down first, it is a rise of negative 3, a run of 1, 2, 3, 4, which made our slope negative 3/4. Alright, that was it. Slope of the line, find 2 points, start from the leftmost point, count your up or down amount, that is either positive or negative, and you will always run right. Another thing we learned this in chapter 5 was to find the rate of change of points, and what I told you to do was to label this, or we taught you to label this as y2 and y1. That means that, y1 and y2, because that's the first y on the list, this is the second y on the list. This is x1 and this is x2. We learned that the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which we learned from muscle memory just means do this number minus that number, which is 28 minus 13 over this minus that, which is 2 minus 5. We then learn to subtract that. 28 minus 13 is 15 over 2 minus 5 is negative 3. And so now all you have to do is 15 divided by negative 3, which is negative 5. That is the rate of change of those 2 points. Alright, so again, that was something else we learned whenever you had that table of values, that we just took that table, labeled our y1, y2, x1, x2. I told you don't have to use this if you remember how to go straight from here to here. Bottom line again for the test next week is that you just know it. So as long as you know that, you are safe. Slope of this line here, again, finding 2 good points. Here's one good point. Here's another good point. Starting from the leftmost point, I have to go up 2, which means that my rise is 2. I have to go over 1, 2, 3, which means my run is 3. And again, my slope on that line, very simple, is just 2/3. Alright? So again, I hope this is bringing stuff back to your memory. You're going to need it next week. So again, just make sure that after this is over, that you try your best to remember how to answer these things and actually try to answer these things as you go. 7 asks about the rate of change of a line passing through 2 points. And what we talked about on this lesson is rate of change is still slope, which is your y2, y1, but I did not like how these were set up. So if you remember, what I taught you to do is just take that first point, 7, 1, and put it here. Take the second point, 4, 8, and put it here. And then once I did that, I can use the table to do slope the way I learned before. So 8 minus 1 on top, 4 minus 7 on the bottom, 8 minus 1 is 7, 4 minus 7 is negative 3. You can write it as negative 7 over 3, but bottom line, there's nothing you can do to reduce 7 over 3. And the proof is in the fact that you can type it into your calculator and see that 7/3 does not reduce. But that is it. Alright, so again, the trick on that is if they gave me 2 points and I'm not used to it, take those 2 points, put them in the form of a table, and then work through them that way. Number 8 was one of those weird slopes. And so again, you ask yourself, well, I don't know if this is 0 or undefined. Well, the question is, can I actually stand on this line? And as much as you might think that I'm standing on this line, that is not true. What I'm actually doing is falling down. What I'm actually doing is falling down and about to hurt myself. So because you cannot stand on that line, it means it is impossible. Impossible to stand on means that this line has a slope that is undefined. So again, keep in mind, if I can't stand on the line, that means it has an undefined slope. If I can stand on the line, which was back here, that means it has a slope of 0. So again, slope of 0 means that I can stand on it, but I just don't go up or down. Undefined slope means it's not even something I can stand on. So it means that you can't even answer that question. It doesn't exist. We have another question again that says something about find the slope of a line passing through 2 points. Again, we want the slope, which means we need a table. 5, negative 3 being the first point, negative 2, negative 1 being the second point. Subtracting, we get negative 1 minus, remember this is negative 1 minus negative 3 because we have a double negative there. Here we have negative 2 minus 5. The safest way to answer this is to use your calculator and type it in appropriately, which is negative 1 minus negative 3. You might want to try typing that in for yourself just to make sure your answer matches mine, which is 2. Again, that's negative 1, which is the button below the 3, the negative sign. That is a minus, but this is a negative. So again, you want to make sure you know how to type those in differently to get the answer of 2 on top. Negative 2 minus 5. Again, you might want to type that in to make sure you can deal with those weird problems there. Your slope on that would be negative 2/7. Again, the reason we know that is because it has one negative in it, which means that the whole fraction is negative. Alright. Another thing you had to learn how to do, and I hope you get your calculators out now and do it for yourself, is you should be able to add fractions on your calculator. Whether you can do them without a calculator is not an issue. But the fact that I've shown you how to do calculator work on these things means that you should know how now. Just remember that you want to put your fractions in parentheses, so 2/3 plus 1/4 equals, of course you get a decimal, and the way we learn to fix that decimal is by hitting math, enter, enter. Again, you should try this for yourself, because you are getting ready for a test, and this question is definitely going to be on there. A question like this is definitely going to be on there, and you should be able to tell me if that's 11/12. Whether you do it by finding the common denominator on both of these things, the way we learned, and saying this has to multiply by 4, so it turns into 8. That multiplies by 3, so that turns into 3. I don't care whether you show me that or not. The bottom line on this fraction question that you get here is if you have not paid attention, if you have not asked questions, you will not know how to get 11/12, and you should, because we've been here 3 weeks now. I guess this is week 4, and you've had plenty of time to work, and you're all sophomores, which means you should be responsible enough to know how to say, hey, Mr. Bradley, how do you type this into a calculator? So other than that, just again, make sure you know how to do that, because next week you are going to be expected to know how to type in a fraction. Graphing the line was another thing we talked about. I think we talked about it yesterday, and what we said was that y equals mx plus b was our format. We talked about how m is the slope, how b is the y-intercept, and how b as the y-intercept is the first thing we look at. That this tells me to go down 1. You should have saw this last year in your Algebra 1 class. And that 3/5 being my slope means from here go 1, 2, 3 up and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over, and then draw a line using a straight edge, which I did not do, but that's because this is a review, all the way across the region. You not just want your line to go dot to dot, you want it all the way across the gridded region, because some teachers mark people wrong for that stuff, and you don't want to miss points for something so simple. Other than that, again, I don't think that's a tough problem to do. Just make sure you're ready for slope-intercept lines and graphing them. Number 12, 2x minus 3y equals 6. This is the one where it's not slope-intercept form, but this is the one where I said you should ignore y first, getting 2x equals 6, which means obviously that x is equal to 3. We talked about how this is the x-axis and that x equals 3 is to the right. Now if this was x equals negative 3, we would have went to the left. Then you ignore x, and when you ignore x, what I told you to do is make sure you don't cover everything, because that is a negative 3y equals 6, which means that 3y equals negative 6, and y therefore equals negative 2. Now y equals negative 2, with this being my y-axis, means I go down 2. If it was a positive 2, I would have went up 2, because that's what y does. Again, up for y is positive, down for y is negative. Right side of x is positive, left side of x is negative. And as long as you know how to do that, or as long as it's coming back to your memory, I think you should be good for next week. Again, the next few days in here, that's really all we're going to be doing, is practicing, and practicing some more, taking some assessments, you showing me what you know how to do, and me trying to help you understand whatever it is that you're missing. So what we're going to do next week, just so you understand, because we're not in school next Friday, is we have today, Thursday, Friday you have a quiz, then you got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. What we're going to do today is, of course, review it. Tomorrow we review for the quiz. Friday we, of course, have a quiz. Monday is another review day. Tuesday what we're going to do is take a pre-test. So if you can show up Tuesday and you want to try to do well on this test, show up Tuesday, because what you're going to see on Tuesday is a test that looks exactly like what you're going, not exactly like, but you'll see the questions that are going to be on the test. And what I will do on Tuesday is grade it and pass it back to you Wednesday, where we will review your pre-test, showing you what you did wrong, and then Thursday you'll actually take the actual test and go from there. So anyway, another question that we saw is they wanted the equation of a line with a slope and it passed through a point. This is the one where our objective was to write down the formula y equals mx plus b. I hope you remember this, and to recognize that this point is an x and a y, and that this is m. And so we plugged in y, which in this case is 6. We plugged in m, which in this case is 3, parentheses x, which is negative 2, plus b. And then we had to find b. And so what we did was we put 6 equals negative 6 plus b. In order to get b by itself, we had to add 6 to both sides, getting 12 equals b. And once we found b, and we had an m of 3 and a b of 12, we used that formula to say y equals 3x plus 12. Again, I hope you remember that. It's really not a hard question to do. It's just one of those questions that's kind of grown. So if you don't think about it, and if you haven't really learned to take this math stuff seriously, you're probably not going to be able to do it, because it's a little bit too much for some people to try to comprehend. But I do hope you remember it. Again, I think it's a question you can get right on the test, especially now that you know you have a whole week to prepare for it. Again, just hope you take it seriously enough to do what you need to do. What is the slope of the equation y equals 3x plus 7? Looking at this, again, remembering that slope is attached to x, y-intercept is by itself. The slope of this is 3. It is not 3x. Your slope is just 3. Again, the slope is the number that is attached to x. And then the very last thing we're going to look at is intercepts, because that's another important thing in algebra. If someone asks you for the x-intercept, it means that you find the x-intercept by ignoring the letter that we don't care about. Since we care about x, that means we ignore y. So again, x-intercept means ignore y and do what we did here before. 8x equals 56. Dividing by 8, we get x equals 7. So our x-intercept is 7. If we want the y-intercept, then we do that by ignoring what we don't care about, and what we don't care about for the y-intercept is x. And again, be careful not to cover up that negative. So you're going to have negative 7y equals 56, which means 7y equals negative 56, and when you divide by 7, y is equal to negative 8. That is the end of the Chapter 5 review. That is pretty much everything that's going to be on the test for Chapter 5. There might be some things I forgot about, but again, we've got a couple of days, as I showed you on that menu there. We've got a couple of days to try to get you ready for that. But again, start getting into the mode of test review. Although we are getting ready for a quiz on Friday for elimination, and that's what a lot of your work on Math Excel starts out as, so make sure you're working on that, because again, as long as you know how to do elimination, you will get a good grade on this quiz. So for the rest of today, make sure you're working on that, and then tomorrow again we'll come in and starting to review for next week. So other than that, it is a shortened day. Keep that in mind, and like I said, get as much as you can out of this so that we can be ready for the test and get you a good grade and get you in position to pass this class so you don't have to be here next year. So good luck today, and again, make sure you're working, asking questions, and doing what you need to do to get better at this craft called mathematics.